Alright, what's going on, guys? 2023 has ushered in a new era for Souls-like games. Games that take the rich lessons and foundations that From Software has built and use it to craft new experiences that pay homage to the pioneers of the genre. And though Souls-likes kinda have a rocky history, it does feel like this section of games is finally finding its true form, with the leaders of the pack being Lies of P and Lords of the Fallen. Today I want to compare these two games, because this has been a pretty heated discussion online, and since one of these games hasn't gone out to market yet, a lot of people are missing the full picture. Now, as someone who's played both these games, this video is not going to be a review of either, although my full review for Lords of the Fallen will be dropping in a few days, so you'll want to be subscribed for that. I just want to show you how they're different when it comes to Souls-like combat, and I need to preface that by saying that both these games are very, very good, so it's not my intention to present one over the other. However, I think this is going to be very interesting to a lot of players. So with that being said, before we dive into it, let me give a shout out to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Factor. Factor offers fresh, never frozen meals delivered right to your doorstep, combining the taste of a restaurant with the convenience of home. Now, as their motto suggests, fitness starts with food, which is why their meals are made to meet nutritional needs, offering a wide range of styles such as keto, calorie smart, chef's choice, and even vegan and veggie, with meals of different styles such as seafood, high protein meats, and even plant-based meals. There's something here for everybody. If you're too busy to cook or go to the grocery store or even track your calories, you can trust Factor to have you covered. The meals come straight to you. All you gotta do is unwrap, heat them up, and then you're ready to enjoy. So if you want to check them out today, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code ZYLSTORM50 to get 50% off your first box. I highly recommend checking them out, guys, and taking that extra step in your nutrition and health. I use their products and meals all the time and really can't recommend it enough. They not only taste good, but will make you feel good, knowing that you're giving your body what it needs. So a massive thank you to Factor for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back into it. To begin, let's compare clips of these two games side by side. When it comes to making a good Souls-like game, one of the most important aspects is character responsiveness. Does the player actually feel like they have full control of their character in the game? And this is the first thing we'll compare. Now, I made a video a while back talking about my complaints with Lies of P, and this was one of them that I had. When you're playing this game, there are a lot of times where you'll have downtime, where the character is either locked into an animation or in the process of recovering from one. And during that time, control is taken away from the player. This became especially frustrating towards the end of the game, when enemies would become very, very fast and have long strings of combos. But in the general moment-to-moment combat, it wasn't too much of an issue. Now, the player does have all the tools to be able to do everything in the game without taking damage. However, player speed is very slow, which means it's very easy to make mistakes and be punished for those. And this is amplified by those many examples of downtime that I talked about, making the game not feel very responsive. Lords of the Fallen has the same system of commitment, where the player is locked into their inputs. But there's a big difference when it comes to how they deal with that. There is very little downtime. As soon as your animation is done, you can start the next move, which is likely going to be dodging to get out of the way or parrying an upcoming attack. If you were to get hit by an attack in Lies of P, your character has a brief window where they're standing still and recovering from that hit. Lords of the Fallen has that window as well, but it's a fraction of the time, so you won't find yourself being juggled between enemy attacks or stuck into a long combo. This also makes it easy to deal with groups of adds, which makes it much more fun to play through the levels when you don't know what's around the next corner. And when all of that is combined with the very fast player speed in Lords of the Fallen, it means this game feels much more responsive and a lot less clunky. But none of that matters if the game doesn't run well, and this is where Lies of P really shines. The game was beautifully optimized, and on PS5 and Xbox I had almost zero issues whatsoever. I honestly can't remember if I ever dropped a frame, and I think a lot of that is due to the game's very smooth art style. In Lords of the Fallen, there are particles everywhere. There's so much motion on screen at all times, and at least when it comes to the beginning parts of the game handles it really well. Now, I played in 1080p 60 for both Lies of P and Lords of the Fallen, with Lords of the Fallen holding that 60 FPS about 90% of the time. There were occasional frame dips, but only when loading in new areas. It never inhibited my actual gameplay at all. The next point of comparison I want to cover is balancing, because I think both these games have interesting takes on it. Some of the most fun I had in Lies of P was just exploring the levels, because there were a lot of times where I just had fun fun fighting some of the fodder enemies without the game overwhelming me. There were plenty of times when I'd still die in the midst of traversing, but never due to a sheer overwhelming amount of ads. Most of the levels in Lies of P felt fair and balanced, while still retaining a good bit of challenge. I can't say the same for the bosses though. In my experience, the bosses were the most unfun part of the game, which was surprising to me considering that bosses are always my favorite part of Souls-likes. But in Lies of P, I just felt so weak against them to the point where it felt unfair. Now I was eventually able to overcome them, but it always felt like luck instead of actual skill. The bosses were always possible, yes, you can do every boss fight without taking damage, but the skill ceiling is so high, it generally feels unfair. And it was telling that every time I felt like a boss was balanced, or that my player did a competitive amount of damage, I could predict that there was going to be a second phase. It just became exhausting that every boss was significantly faster than you, had a massive amount of health, and was always healing unless you kept constant aggression. But again, they were always possible, but in my opinion, not very fun. My thoughts are kind of flip-flopped when it comes to Lords of the Fallen. While I am still absolutely loving the exploration, especially when it comes to the Umbral and Axiom dynamic, the levels are very overwhelming at times when it comes to the number of ads. It's very easy to find yourself completely surrounded, very far away from a checkpoint, and just having to flee for your life if you don't want to have to restart all your progress. And when it comes to Umbral, that makes a lot of sense, because it's supposed to create a feeling of dread, but it does create a bit of frustration in me that I know I'm missing some secrets and exploration that I would love to do. And the fact that it is worthwhile to check every nook and cranny makes me wish the ads were turned down a little bit. But the opposite is true for the boss fights in Lords of the Fallen. Where I found the Lies of P bosses to be unfun and frustrating, the ones in Lords of the Fallen are balanced and satisfying to fight. They're not easy by any means, but at no point was I thinking I shouldn't have died there. I was able to recognize my mistakes, come back and fix them. And that's how the Souls-like gameplay loop should go. Now I haven't seen all the bosses in the game yet, and again this is not a review of the game, but I haven't fought a boss yet that I wouldn't want to fight again. It really does make me wish there was a boss rush mode, because even though I am getting my teeth kicked in a few times, I'm having fun while doing it. We also need to discuss player versus ad balancing, how the enemies react to being attacked. I found myself really bugged by Lies of P in this regard, because so many times there are enemies that just don't react to getting hit at all. They don't stagger, they don't recoil whatsoever, and in a game where it's such a big commitment to press and attack, things like this create a sense of artificial difficulty. Even the toughest enemies in Lords of the Fallen acknowledge when they get hit, and it's not due to their stagger buildup. This is what makes combat feel satisfying, because there's payoff to your actions, and it makes you feel like your attacks have weight to them. Now the Path of Misery level in Lies of P did this very well, and the levels with the corpses felt much more fun to play than the puppet levels. And I do understand from a lore perspective why puppets wouldn't stagger, but when that makes up a majority of the game, it does in my opinion hurt the fun of it. But if it sounds like I'm dogging Lies of P too much, that's because the Souls-like combat is probably the weakest part of this game. What I enjoyed about Lies of P was the story, the setting, the ability to make choices, but when it comes to action, I just couldn't help but recognize how far behind it falls when compared to the Souls games and even other Souls-likes. But I do know there's a lot of people out there that love Lies of P's combat, and that's due to its deflect system. If you can manage to master it, then the game can become a lot of fun. But like I mentioned earlier, the skill ceiling is so high that the majority of players likely won't. Lords of the Fallen has the same fundamental skeleton as Lies of P when it comes to the combat. It has that same deflect system, but the difference here is that the deflect system is a bit more generous, and it's only one of your tools. Where Lies of P made the dodge nearly useless in comparison, so that you had to learn the deflect system, Lords of the Fallen makes the deflect and the dodge equally as powerful. It doesn't force you to use one over the other, and I think a lot of players are going to enjoy that more. So here's the thing, if you are someone who enjoys traditional Souls combat more than any other type of third-person RPG, Lords of the Fallen is the closest thing you can get to that Dark Souls feel. But if you're willing to step out of that and want to undergo a challenge to become a master at a different style, then Lies of P's combat can give you a new look on what these games can be. But I do have to say wholeheartedly, when it comes to Souls-like combat, Lords of the Fallen does it much better. And if that's the feeling you want recaptured, then you'll absolutely need to play this game. Now I do promise you guys, these are my honest thoughts. I really did enjoy Lies of P, but I just couldn't help but recognize how different it was. With that being said though, my full review of Lords of the Fallen will be coming out in a few days, and the game drops this coming Friday. We have a ton of content coming out for it that you will absolutely not want to miss, so you'll want to make sure you're subscribed for that. Anyways though guys, that is going to pretty much do it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to leave a like on it. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments section below, and with all that, I will catch you in the next one.